thing. And so what I find is that you just have a lot of people whose marriage are struggling that wouldn't necessarily need to be struggling because of all of the challenges. And we just have to teach how. We just have to teach them how to have the marriage that they want and the marriage that's going to really support them.
Welcome to More Than a Milspouse, the podcast for military spouses who want to live with more meaning and less overwhelm. I'm your host, Christine, seasoned military spouse, mom of 3, life coach, and your guide to intentionally designing a life you're excited about as a military spouse. I'm here to help you get the clarity you need so you can get unstuck and unlock your purpose and potential. Because you, my friend, are more than a milspouse. You have something valuable to offer. And when you pursue the things that light your heart on fire, you trade frustration for fulfillment and isolation for a life of impact. It's time to discover who you are meant to be, because together we can change the world. Welcome back to the show. This summer we are working our way through the Milspouse Transformation series, an entire series focused on helping you transform your life by looking at small shifts you can make as a military spouse that can lead to some really big results. In episode 207, we kicked off the series. In episode 208, we discussed the importance of rest and how to practically infuse it in your life. In 209, we dove into military spouse wellness and how we boost our mental and emotional health. In episode 210, we focused on our physical health and specifically how to be healthy on a budget. In 211, we rounded out the trifecta of our personal well-being by focusing on our spiritual health and how we can actually build resilience. And then last week, we finished out the focus of taking care of ourselves by talking about our home environment and how that impacts our life. Today, we are moving on to the second pillar of creating a fulfilling life, our relationships. And the next 3 weeks will be all about relationships, because a fulfilling life is not just about taking care of ourselves, of doing things that make us happy. We were created to connect with others. And so we're going to start this process of digging into our relationships. And today, specifically, we're talking about your relationship with your spouse or your significant other. And when I thought about who to have this conversation with, I knew I wanted to invite Dr. Lindsay Cavanaugh back onto the show. She was a guest on the podcast, about 2 years ago. And that conversation is still one of the most downloaded episodes on the podcast. I will have it linked for you in the show notes. But Lindsay is a Navy spouse, a psychologist, a marriage coach, and she specializes in military marriages. She started the Married to Military podcast around the same time that I started the Milspouse Mastermind Show. And that podcast is now known as the Married After Kids podcast. Lindsay, welcome back to the podcast. You were a guest on our show a little over 2 years ago, and so it's so exciting to have you back. Would you just take a moment to catch us up on what's been going on in your life over the last couple of years? You navigated an overseas move by yourself with 2 kiddos. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. Hi, I am so happy to be back. It's so crazy just to think about all of the things that have happened in over 2 years. So I had a baby, which was a feat in and of itself. We moved to Japan. My husband was already deployed, and we did not have the passport for the newborn. It takes a really long time to get all of that stuff. And so by the time we got here, he was already deployed, and I traveled from Colorado to Japan by myself with let's see, how old was she at the time? A 5-month-old, a 4-year-old, and a cat, which honestly ended up being one of the hardest parts of the whole thing. We had 12 checked bags and I want to say 5 carry-ons, and we did it somehow. Somehow we made it here. We have since done 2 deployments. We're gearing up for our 3rd and just trying to navigate, like, life overseas. It's crazy to feel settled, but when you have deployments and stuff always coming up, it's hard to ever really settle, but I feel like I'm a totally different person than when we talked over 2 years ago.
Well, that's a lot of life to go through in a span of 2 years. I mean, having a second baby, which changes a lot about life, navigating that first overseas move, that was a game changer for me. Just getting through that whole experience of what it's like to literally travel to the other side of the world with all of your belongings and just that adjustment. And then you're doing these deployments on top of that. So I feel like you have had all of the experiences in the last 2 years.
It's kind of funny. I talk to my husband sometimes and I say, whatever like juice I had in my tank coming into this tour has sort of been depleted. For the first time, we're getting towards the end of his career, and for the first time, I'm like, yeah, I am really ready to get out, which I know kind of comes up for people a lot. Um, because this one has been tough. Like, there's been a lot of tears this tour, and for all the amazing parts and getting to experience Japan and getting to meet this amazing community over here, for all of those parts, there's been some really equally challenging, tough parts, and I think that it has really tested me in ways that I had never been tested before. And I know that I'm strong, right? As a military spouse, you have to be strong. But after this, I'm like, all right, what do you want me to do? Like, I can do absolutely anything. It doesn't mean I want to, but it means I know that I can.
So I'm really curious because you have been a military marriage coach for the last couple of years as you were navigating all these situations. And what is it like to try to coach others well and hold space for them while you're going through this on yourself?
That's a really good question. I think that it was sort of what saved me, and many times because I got to really do something still that kind of lit me up. And I know one of the hardest parts about moving is really getting established. Like, where's your community? Where do you fit in? What's the things that are yours? And because now I've been doing this coaching online, I had that. And so it was sort of like my talisman. It was like the constant, like this area of my life I feel like I know what I'm doing. I feel really confident. It feels really stable. And when everything else felt like it was like turned upside down. So I kind of say that it was just as life-saving for me as it was to my clients during that time.
That's good. Just to have, when we have that one thing that is our own that we can feel confident in and that we can take with us when we move. Because
Mhm,
sometimes, you're starting over from scratch in so
totally.
many different areas of life. And to have that one thing that you can hold on to say, this is mine and I can take this with me, that's really
Totally.
powerful.
And look, I think that this can be hobbies. I think it could be things, like hiking. It could be things like, going out to new restaurants. It could be, I mean, it doesn't have to be work like it was for me in this situation. I've even gone to new places and had like regular friend phone dates until I set up friends where I am, just knowing, right? I think bringing in some of those familiar comforts when you initially move it's really invaluable and it really makes such a difference.
It really, really does. And there's so many different ways to do it. Like you said, it doesn't have to be taking the job, but anything that you can take with you. It made a huge difference for me when I moved from Guam to Hawaii to say, I'm still taking the podcast. The podcast is coming
Mhm,
with me. I don't have to
mhm.
leave that behind just because I'm moving. And so there's so many different ways that we can do this. I would love for you just to talk over the last few years as you have worked with military spouses in particular about their marriage. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you've learned through this process?
Whew, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I always carry with me is that nobody knows how to have a healthy relationship. And it's not our fault. Nobody is taught how to do this. They don't cover this stuff. We as a scientific community know exactly what makes healthy marriages. But like my guess is that you probably don't know what that is. Like nobody knows. Like we have all of this data and and it's not being shared. And
Mm,
yet, research also shows that your marriage is the number one predictor for how happy and healthy you are. So they did this 80-year study in out of Harvard and they looked at all these markers, things like genetics and diet and exercise and they went really deep into like hair color and all of this thinking that some of these things had to predict happiness and what came out of it was every single time it pointed to marriage. And these actual scientists, they didn't believe that. And they ran it again and again. For 80 years, they have done this study to show that marriage is the number one predictor. And yet nobody talks about it. And I think that as a military community, you have the same sort of thing. You have people that don't know how to make or have or create a strong marriage. You don't know how to pivot when it's not going well. You don't know how to get out of struggles in super healthy ways. We're all just sort of guessing and trying things and going off of what we've learned or what we've been modeled. And then with military, we have all of these really challenging added barriers that also get in the way of this, right? You have these unnatural things like deployments where you're gone for months at a time. You have this kind of chaotic schedule that is ever changing that you have no control over. I've dove into even some of like the parenting literature and they talk about like the importance of kind of helping each other and sharing the mental load and that isn't always a thing for military marriages. Like even if they wanted to, that isn't always a thing. And so what I find is that you just have a lot of people whose marriage are struggling that wouldn't necessarily need to be struggling because of all of the challenges and we just have to teach how. We just have to teach them how to have the marriage that they want and the marriage that's going to really support them.
So, if you were president for a day and
Ooh.
you had the chance to take all of this data that exists and say, how do we help military marriages? Like what would be some of the things that you would do?
Oh, that's such a good man. I would love to be president for one day only. I would the first thing that I would do is especially in schools for like military, but schools, I would start it in kindergarten. I mean, preschool. Heck, we are going to start learning about how to do this stuff. We're going to have a whole, you're going to, just like you learn about math for however many minutes a day, you're going to learn about relationships every day for this many minutes from the time you start going to school until the time you end going to school. I think it's just that important. The other thing that I would do specifically for military is um I would go in and revamp a lot of the systems in there, right? I would make it so that people felt a lot more comfortable to get support. I would make so there's a lot more financial assistance for these kinds of support things. Um we would just do a lot to ensure that everyone had the necessary tools where right now I think, people are having to choose from do do I buy this meal today versus it's really challenging and I would try to relieve some of that if I could.
Yeah, I think all of us listening could name some of these challenges that make marriage really, really challenging in ways that it doesn't have to be or it wouldn't otherwise
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
On the flip side, what have you observed that can be a blessing to the fact that someone is in a military marriage?
One of the things that even in my own marriage that I say all the time is we had to be so sure of each other really early on. We started long distance. He immediately started workups for a deployment, and he is my husband's Navy, so we had only email, and it was like it would have been easier for me to date anybody else. Like, it would have been easier, I was like, "Ah, no, I'm just gonna," and I didn't want to, and I think that really grounding into that, like, we were so sure about each other. Like, I may not always still be sure that I even like all these aspects of military life, but we were so sure about each other, and we knew we had to figure out how to communicate in it. And I think that this is the toughest part for people sometimes, is they don't always get to the how. I mean, I guess I have the benefit of going to school and kind of knowing what we needed to do, but I think that above all, people just can take advantage of all that stuff. The other thing that marriages do is they really appreciate the little things a lot more than the average civilian couple, right? Like, I appreciate when he is home. I probably will say thank you a whole lot more. I try not to take advantage of the little moments because I know that it might not happen for much longer. Or we are gearing up for another deployment here, and I think that just the gratitude and, like, daily gratitude has shown to be a very strong marker of a healthy, successful marriage. And so I think that that's another thing that we have that just really kind of naturally is built in because we know what it's like to not get it.
Yeah, I mean, that gratitude and that perspective that we have that, not every holiday or birthday or whatever are we going to get to spend together, and it makes
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
appreciate the time that you do have together so much more than if you just take it for granted that we always do this or this is always available to us.
Mhm. Yeah, even just the little things like when my husband gets to take my daughter to school and just gives me that extra 15 minutes of my day back, I appreciate that because for so many of the days I have to do that. And I think that in the Gottman Institute really came out with this, that they were saying, "Hey, they're, older, I wanna say probably 70s at this point, and he's like, "I make coffee for her every morning, and every morning she says thank you, and it's part of that ritual, and we need to do it." And I think that it's so easy to get into the routine of life and forget to say those things and do those things, and I think military life almost, like, forces us to remember, but it's good because we're putting those really key elements that make a healthy marriage in because we do appreciate it. It is important.
Yeah. So for those of us who are in a place where we're like, hey, there are a lot of stressors on our marriage, and our marriage isn't where we want it to be. Sometimes we don't want to necessarily work on our marriage because we know the other person is going to be deploying or they're working
Mm.
long hours or whatever it is that you're like, if they can't invest in this, then I'm not motivated to invest in that. So, what would you say to that?
I love this question. So I would say still get support. And I personally have created a one-sided marriage support system where I work with just, one party. And the reason for that being is because I worked in the military community for so long, and there was a lot of that where it's like, oh, I can't get started because my partner's going to be gone, or I can't get started because they don't want to get support yet. They are right, they're worried about that this will get to their command and this will affect their job, or they're just, you can be like, they're just tough and they don't need it kind of thing. And so I to me, that is more damaging when you feel like you just have to wait, when you just have to wait until they get ready. Because look, when it comes to making changes, there's actually stages of change. Like, and it's very rare that you both as a couple are going to be at the same stage of change at the exact same time. And yet, if you have gotten to the point where you are ready to make some changes in your marriage, like, you wanna act on that. You wanna make that happen. You don't wanna sit around and wait and be in something that doesn't feel great just for them to get ready, not knowing when that will be. And so the one-sided support is really being able to change the marriage, the whole marriage, using just one person as being part of the process. And the number one concern I get with this is people say, but I'm already doing all the work. Like, why do I have to do this too? Why do I have to always be the one? And what I say is that it's not necessarily you doing the work, because I see marriage as a circle. And in one part of that circle kind of makes some changes, the other part has no choice but to change as well. And so, really, all it's doing is you are initiating the start of that change. But the good part of it is that you're doing the change that you want to see. Eventually, if your spouse has things they want to see, they got to come in and they've got to engage and they have to be invested too. But so you really get to start seeing the changes that you want to see the most. And it can come from one person. Mostly, I say about 85% of my caseload, I'm working with just one part of the marriage. And then maybe in the other 15, both people are ready and able to work on it at the exact same time. And so for me, it doesn't matter. For me, I can bring equally amazing changes to a marriage, even if just one person's participating. So, what I would say to them is still look it up, still find that resource, get started, because if you want to feel different in your marriage, that's what it takes is to start, getting that support now versus waiting later on.
And that's what I love about what you are doing because I feel like there's so many people out there that if you go to a counselor, they're like, well, if you want to do marriage therapy, then you've got to bring both parties. And it can feel like, well, this is just one more area where I'm putting my life on hold. I'm putting my dreams, I'm putting what I really want out of life on hold because of military life. And what
Mhm.
I have learned and experienced in my own life is that there is always something that we can be doing to grow ourselves, to improve an
Mhm.
area that isn't dependent on our external circumstances, that isn't dependent on anyone else. If I want to have better friendships, I can work on myself and on how I can be a better friend regardless of what the
Mhm.
people around me are doing. And that is the same for our marriage relationships. Like I can work on myself regardless of whether my spouse is working on themselves at the same time.
Totally. I actually made an entire mini course called How to Help Your Partner Shift. And the entire premise of this course is how you bring about changes in your partner, but you're the one initiating those changes. Because so often what happens is people are asking different things from their spouses, but they're doing it in a way that's bringing up defensiveness in their spouse. That's right. And so they're not seeing the changes they want to see. And then our brains make all these weird stories about, oh, they don't care enough. Oh, they don't want to do it. Like all of these things. And eventually now nothing's happening and everyone's unhappy. When really there are some key changes that we can make as individuals that will also bring key changes in what they do. And I think that we so often underestimate the power that we have in a dynamic to kind of bring in what we want. And so that really is what it's all about is how do you, right? What kind of language do you use? What kind of tone do you use? What kind of how do you set it up? How do we do it in a way that actually communicates to your spouse where they aren't defensive, where they're listening, where they can hear you, where they can, start to actually talk about it, ask questions, and then you can hear about if they're not doing a certain thing, what is getting in the way and how you troubleshoot that. Like it's a game changer. And some people are just never getting to those conversations because of the defensiveness or resentment or whatever it is that's getting in the way.
Yeah, and there's so many things that we can tell ourselves stories and start to believe them, whether or not they are actually true at all about how the other person is
Mhm.
responding. But there's a way out of that. So if we
Yep.
know that we want a stronger or better marriage than what we have right now, what are one or two practical things that we can do to make a difference in the relationship we have?
Yeah, I think that if you know that you want a stronger marriage, I to me there's always it's like two angles of the same thing. First of all, how are you thinking about your marriage? Are you thinking they're never going to change? This is going to be bad forever. They don't care about me, right? And these are all really natural, normal thoughts that we all have. Like it's not like right? We all do this. And these thoughts are really, really devastating to our marriage as a whole because if I think that my spouse doesn't care, I'm probably not going to show up for him. I'm probably not going to do the things that fuel him as well, that make him feel loved, that make him feel cared for. Because I'm not cared for, I'm going to just protect myself. And so, really digging into how are you thinking about the marriage and is it ultimately serving your marriage overall? And I personally adopt a mindset of my marriage is strong no matter what. My spouse cares about me more than anything, no matter if I feel like I'm seeing it or not, right? Like, no matter if I feel that that's what's happening. So, in my head, if I ground into that mindset, that means then if he cares about me and I'm not feeling it, there's something getting in the way. It's not being communicated. There's a barrier in place, and I need to figure out what that is instead of actually helping him to care more, right? And so it's such a different, like, I'm not stuck in this, like, someone doesn't care about me, which just feels really terrible. And instead, I'm focusing something's in the way. Let's fix it and figure it out and get rid of it so that I can feel it. So that's kind of the one side. The other side is actions. So are you doing the loving, caring actions that grow a marriage? Are you expressing your partner's love language? Are you saying appreciation? Are you giving words of affirmation? Are you doing those things that grow your marriage, even if you're not getting them in return? Because that's the other thing I hear all the time. Well, I'm not getting them from my spouse. So, like, I don't want to do them. It's too hurtful. And it's like, well, somebody's got to start. Somebody's got to start doing it because that's usually, again, it's that circle. If I'm not feeling appreciated, then and I'm not appreciating my spouse, now they're not feeling appreciated, and now you're just right. Somebody needs to initiate it. So are you doing those things to intentionally pour into your marriage that just need to happen? And I find that if you tackle it from the mindset perspective and with your actions, change has no choice but to happen.
It's really that thought and the action. That thought, what
Totally.
am I thinking about my marriage and how is that impacting me? And then what am I doing to improve the marriage, to build a healthy relationship? And am I choosing to act in a way that is loving regardless of how I feel in the moment?
Mhm.
That's
Mm,
that's really
and
really
that
good.
is so hard. And honestly, this is really the true value of support because staying in that and doing those things when you're not feeling loved and when you're not feeling supported, like that's actually the hardest part.
Yeah.
Right? Because we also have our own traumas and triggers and things, and it is really hard when people are in kind of that triggered place to then, like, be loving to somebody else who they don't really feel in that moment, right? Like, immense love for. And so I think, like, really knowing that staying in and doing those things, that's what brings change, but it sounds so much easier than it is, and it's worth it. It's worth doing it to figure it out, and to have that support. Like I said, it's the number one predictor for how happy you are in life. It's the number one predictor of longevity, how long you live. It's so crazy important how this stuff is, and doing it is challenging enough, and that's where just having somebody that can, like, let's stay in it. You're so close. Like, let's try this because that wasn't working, right? Like, just that little bit of support to get you where you want to be.
Because it's one thing to know what you need to do to actually affect change, to actually make the
Hmm.
change is what's
Yes.
hard. And if it was easy, we would not be having this conversation because everybody would be doing it. But having that
Totally.
support can really help when you're trying to make that change, when you're trying to make that shift. And it's much easier said than actually done.
Totally. Like, I get my own marriage support, and it's not because I don't know what to do. Like, I'm actually the reverse where I do know what to do because I've, studied this for 16 years, but will be in a situation where I'm like, "You're saying the wrong thing. You are saying the wrong thing," or like, "You're gonna have to apologize for that later," right? I will know exactly what I need to be saying and doing, and I still won't do it, right? Like, this stuff is just hard, again, because when you're emotional or when you've been hurt, it just becomes such a challenge, and so I really say that more to normalize it for everyone, that it's just tough. And so if you don't know and it's hard to stay in, like, this is why we have the high divorce rate that we do. And it doesn't have to be that high. And that's what kills me is there's a lot of marriages that end up ending before they even have a chance to see what they could do or see what they could be. Um yeah.
No, it's so good, and just to have that encouragement that change is possible, that it doesn't have
Mhm.
to it doesn't have to stay the way that it is right now, that we can do things that impact how our relationship is going to look and ultimately have a happier life when we take
Totally.
that action, when we get that support. Now, you recently pivoted from just focusing on marriage to focusing on marriage after kids. And now I
Yes.
know how much having kids has impacted my own life and my marriage, but what have you noticed about marriage after kids in particular?
So kids add a level of a barrier that is really unlike any other. And again, now if you have the military challenges on top of that, it's just crazy the amount of stress that is put on your marriage. So, research shows that upwards of 95% of couples report a decline in happiness and satisfaction in their marriage after having kids. 95%. This is across cultures, this is across, right, socioeconomic statuses, like you name it. People have kids and are less happy. And the thing that they also say about it is the happiness doesn't go back up unless you intervene. And it's really because of that systemic stress that is put on your marriage, right? All of a sudden, you have that, your mental load explodes, and being able to kind of manage that together. And if you don't have the tools, which again, nobody's taught how to do. Like, I myself, like, we really struggled after having that was probably our lowest point. And I think that no one talks about it. I think when you talk about having kids, you talk about like, oh, they're so wonderful and magical and great. And it's like, yeah, they are. And it really crushes marriages at a time when you need to have the strongest marriage possible so that you have this, strong partnership and in all of it. And so I think that for me, kind of diving in, I've always been the like, if no one's talking about it, I wanna be talking about it. And so and I was also sort of joking with you too that I needed one part of my life that wasn't fully about the military. I still say I really like it's the military community is my heart and my soul, and I so value them, and I will always seek to work with them and try to make things better. But I needed something that was just a little bit outside that I needed to talk to some civilians every now and then too. And so I think with this shift, being able to really kind of reach a larger population. And you just see that in the military, outside the military, just people are really struggling with this stuff. And I I actually did a reel a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about the challenges, like feeling really lonely and feeling kind of unsupported and feeling like you're not on the same page. And by far and away, the comments that I got were just leave, just leave. And I think that this is what people say is like, if you're not happy in a marriage, just leave. And there's no one on there that said, get support, fix this, get support and change your marriage dynamic. And that's what makes me so sad because I know that that's an option and I know how amazing it is and I know how great people feel after they've made that because I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times, but that's just not what people are communicating. People are communicating, get out and find somebody else, and then they're having the same issues with that somebody else, and then we're doing it all over again.
Well, because it's what seems the easiest in the moment, right? Do the thing that is easy that makes you happy, but usually if we're not solving the root cause of the issue, like that just comes up in a future relationship and
Mhm.
really to say, "Hey, there's another way." Like you said, I don't hear as many people saying, "Hey, you can work on
Mm-mm.
this. You can get to what's really causing the problem rather than just saying the other person is the problem."
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. I hear that all the time. It's just easier to leave. And the reality is like getting a divorce is not easy. Getting a divorce is actually really, really challenging. I have 3 clients right now that are going through a divorce and they've been doing it for over a year and it's very emotionally taxing and it's really hard and really devastating. And so I always say like both tracks are actually hard. Improving your marriage and learning how to do that, yes, it's a challenge, it takes a little bit of work, but hopefully what you're doing is you're doing it with somebody that you love or at least have loved and you're getting to a good place, and another one is you're really grieving the loss of something that, that you thought, right? And so I just think both are so challenging, and it's just what kind of hard do you wanna start with, right? Like, that's what it comes down to for me, and to me, like, I wanna be with my spouse, I wanna be married to my spouse, I want to it's always worth it to me to do the extra work so that we feel good. I don't wanna start over, I don't wanna date, I don't wanna, like, you know? I don't wanna do any of that again, and so to it just makes me sad that sometimes people feel like they don't have the other option.
Mhm. And I love that you are offering that. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about your experience because I know a lot of times we talk about as military spouses putting our goals and our dreams on the back burner because of
Mhm,
military life. But so many times that has more to do with having kids than just
mhm.
the military life itself. So, what has it looked like for you to try to build a business as a military spouse with young kids? And how has your that impacted your relationship with your spouse?
I love this question. Um, you're right. I think that having kids has been a way bigger challenge for me with my business, with my practice than the actual military life. And I've had a lot of challenges with military life because as as a person living overseas, we are not allowed to work in certain circumstances like I had to get a lot of legal approval. I can only see people in these locations. There's a lot of logistics that come in to for me to be able to do what I'm doing here. But for me, the biggest challenge comes like I still have to be the default parent. My spouse is gone. We are in every 6 months, he deploys for 6 months. And right, if anything happens, I have to be the one available. If my kid gets sick, if there's something that they need, if when they need to get picked up from school, like it all really has to come on me. And so I need to be incredibly flexible. I need to have something that really works with me. And so I have had to really figure that piece out. I always worked in clinics and I always just worked in hospitals. And so all of a sudden, like that wasn't conducive to this lifestyle. And I know that in that moment when I had to quit, and it was kind of also around COVID, we were stationed in Portugal. I couldn't work. I couldn't, and it was like the most resentment I ever had. And the natural outlet was my spouse. Like, I knew I didn't wanna take it out on him, but it was almost impossible not to. Like, your career has put me into this position where I can't do what I wanna do, and I was not happy. I really give a lot of credit to full-time parents that, that stay home because it is such a challenge for me. It is not something that I am built to do. I used to have a lot of guilt about that, but I just let that go because it just doesn't I'm not good at it. I don't even end up enjoying it. And so, for me, it was really like having to figure all of that out. And we fought a lot. We fought a lot about how limiting my career was because of military life. And so we've had to really have multiple conversations about how he can support me in the ways that he can support me and right, like what we can do to make sure that I am doing something that fills my soul and lets me do what I want to do despite all of the barriers. And so it's just a lot of conversations. We've had to get really good at communicating about all of that. And then I've had to create something again that's just really flexible. Like, I still have to be the one to flex if something comes up and being kind of okay with that too. So I feel like there's just so many different layers, and it's that kind of thing this a civilian will never appreciate.
Yeah, and I think it's so helpful to have people that we can reach out to that understand these unique challenges, that it doesn't solve the problem just because you know that it's
Mhm.
harder. That doesn't solve the problem itself, but it helps to have somebody that you can talk to that understands that unique challenge, and to say that, okay, it's going to take some more conversations. It's going to take, you're going to at times have these feelings of resentment, to feel frustrated by the circumstance, by the way that things are that can't change. But there is
Mhm.
a path through it, a way forward, and you can get support in that.
Yes, yeah. And I think even being able to say, like, "How did you solve that problem?" Like, maybe it might not be what solves mine, but, like, I wanna hear people who have gone through the problems that I'm currently experiencing and figure out what they did. Like, how did you do it? How do I learn from that? And how do I right? And then I try to give back to other people who are trying to also make it work. Because I think what it takes for the military spouse is you have to be incredibly creative. You have to be incredibly resourceful. You have to be right, like, it just all of these extra things, and it can be annoying at times, don't get me wrong, but I think figuring out how to do that, it's worth it overall if it means that you are happy.
Absolutely. It is worth it, and there is so much that can come out of figuring out that path forward. To yes, it's going to take resourcefulness, yes, it's going to take creativity, but looking at what is possible because of that, and how you can have a healthy relationship with the person that you love in the process, even if there are all of these challenges that you may not want in your life. So, as
Mhm.
we wrap up, number one, I just want to give you an opportunity to share some encouragement, to a spouse who knows that their marriage isn't where they want it to be, and is ready for something to change.
So what I would say to you is that we know how to fix that. And by we, I mean like the psychological community. There is decades of research. There are decades of providers that, like, we know exactly the skills and the tools and the things that will strengthen your marriage. And so it is known. And I think so often that is what we feel like there's, no hope and I don't know how to do it, and it can be known on how to feel better. And so my advice, my recommendation for everyone is seek that out. Seek out whether it's a provider near you, whether it's a provider like me online, whether it's right, but seek out those experts that know this and learn how to do it so that you can start having the marriage that you want. And even if you start seeing a provider and you don't click, or you don't, find a different one, because that's the other thing I see too, where somebody has tried some sort of counseling or something in the past and felt like it didn't work. And I think it really is, find the provider that's going to serve you best. I have sometimes gone through like 5 or 6 before I found, will find the one that I really like. And it is worth it to me every single time to do it. This is not about like hurting their feelings or not hurting their feelings. It doesn't matter. It's about you. It's about your marriage. And so getting what you want, getting somebody that sees and has a philosophy similar to yours, it's worth it every single time.
Which is a great segue into letting everybody know how they can connect with you and work with you.
Yeah. So I love connecting with people. I love hearing from people. It's me in the DM. So I love talking with people. I love answering questions, all of the things. You can find me on Instagram at Married After Kids. And I also have a podcast called Married After Kids that you can check out as well. And I do offer a free 30-minute Married After Kids intervention call. Like I said, military will always have my heart. And so I always will, offer some special things for my military community. And so if you're interested, absolutely get on that call. Let me know that you heard about this from here, and we can make sure that you are taken care of.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on today and for just sharing your wisdom and your expertise, and most of all, your encouragement with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so fun to be back and just see how we've both grown, and it's just really exciting. So thank you for offering this wonderful resource for everybody.
If you know that your marriage isn't where you want it to be, then I highly recommend booking a session with Dr. Lindsay. She has spent her career studying military marriages, and she absolutely understands the obstacles that come with military life and how to build a healthy relationship in the midst of those obstacles. Now, next week on the podcast, we will continue our exploration of relationships, talking all about transforming your relationship with your family. Until then, come join me inside our free Facebook community. Send me a DM on Instagram. And if you haven't yet downloaded your own copy of the Milspouse Transformation Guide, don't forget that tool is free for you on the website all summer long. Until next time, may you live filled, fueled, and full of joy. Hey, amazing Milspouse. Before you go, I want you to know that I love hearing from you. The More Than a Milspouse community exists to help you thrive as a military spouse. Figure out what lights your heart on fire and empower you to live with purpose and impact. You can have an incredible impact simply by heading over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. But your impact doesn't stop there. You can empower those around you simply by sharing an episode with a friend or neighbor, someone who needs a little encouragement in this military life. And if this episode was meaningful to you, spread the love by taking a screenshot of this episode and tagging me on Instagram so we can continue to reach more people, change more lives, and shift the way that military spouses look at life. Because we are better together, and together we can change the world. Let's do it.